On the dark night of August 8, 1963, a Royal Mail train was traveling from Glasgow to London. Inside one of its carriages were bags filled with cash, worth nearly £67 million today, or about 800 Indian rupees crore. The train's driver, Jack Mills, was speeding through the darkness, pushing the engine forward into the silent night. Suddenly, at a crossing, a red signal light flashed on. This immediately felt abnormal, because at that time and location, a red signal made no sense at all. Still, Jack Mills reacted instantly. He slammed on the brakes and brought the train to a halt on a deserted stretch of track. For a brief moment, everything fell completely silent. But hidden within that silence was a master plan, one that was about to execute the biggest robbery of the century, the Great Train Robbery, where the train itself was stolen. Viewers, this may sound like the plot of a movie, but in real life, criminals carried out a suspense-filled plan and looted millions of pounds from a British government train without firing a single bullet. It all began months earlier when a group of well-known London criminals came together, putting their heads together to pull off something extraordinary. Bruce Reynolds, the mastermind behind the plan, began crafting this unmatched robbery alongside a few trusted partners. Bruce Reynolds had access to classified information about Britain's National Postal Service, Royal Mail. This secret intelligence came from a senior Royal Mail security officer, whose identity was never revealed. The information revealed that the train traveling from Glasgow to London carried a special carriage known as a High Value Package, or HVP. On a specific day, this carriage was scheduled to transport an extraordinarily large sum of money, and that was the exact coach they planned to target. Although Bruce Reynolds' associates were well-known criminals, they had no experience robbing trains. So, they brought in another London-based gang that did have expertise in train robberies. This infamous group was known as the South Coast Raiders. Slowly, the team kept growing, and eventually, more than 15 people became part of the plan. They were determined to rob a government train without firing a single shot. But this was no ordinary heist where you simply stop a train and loot it. It required months of meticulous planning. On the evening of August 7, 1963, at exactly 6:50 p.m., the train departed from Glasgow Central Station on its journey to London. It was scheduled to arrive at London Euston Railway Station at 4 a.m. the following morning. The train consisted of 12 coaches and 72 post office staff members were on board, sorting mail throughout the journey. This train was operated solely to transport parcels and mail to different cities. That's why it was designed to drop parcels at multiple stations without ever stopping. Whenever the train passed a station, the local post office staff would hang mail bags on special elevated racks placed along the platform. As the train passed through, it would slow down slightly. The staff inside would use a metal hook or net to grab those hanging bags, while the bags meant for that station were dropped off while the train was still moving. Through this process, mail was distributed to different stations without the train coming to a halt. The carriage that was meant to be robbed was not yet attached to the train. It was safely parked at Nene Valley Railway Station. This coach was known as the HVP, High Value Packages Carriage, because it mostly carried large amounts of cash sent by people through money orders to other cities. Back in 1960, about 3 years before this incident, the Post Office Investigation Branch, IB, had instructed that security alarm systems be installed in HVP coaches to improve safety. By 1961, 3 HVP carriages had been fitted with these alarm systems. The older coaches that did not have alarms were kept in reserve. But the day of the robbery was the most crucial of all. On that day, the HVP coaches equipped with security alarm systems were out of service. As a result, a reserve carriage, M3024M, had to be used, one that had no security system at all. This was an extremely valuable tip the robbers received from a Royal Mail insider. When the train left Glasgow and reached Nene Valley Railway Station, railway staff attached the HVP carriage second in line, right behind the engine. This was the first major tip the robbers had. But the second tip was even more important. Normally, an HVP carriage carried around 300,000 pounds. However, because the previous week had been a bank holiday weekend, The amount being transported on the day of the robbery was close to 3 million pounds in cash. That was tip number 2. In other words, a coincidence that might occur once in several years had come together on this single day. 12 times the usual amount of money was being carried, and at the same time, the security alarm-equipped HVP coach was unavailable. But for the robbers, this was no coincidence at all. They had been planning for this exact day for months. Soon, the train departed from Nene Valley Station with the HVP carriage attached. Night had fully set in, and the 58-year-old driver, Jack Mills, was driving the train at speed toward its destination. Meanwhile, the gang of robbers was already lying in wait, hidden in the bushes near the railway tracks, preparing for the next phase of their plan. The planning was absolutely flawless. Around 3 a.m. on August 8th, 1963, one member of the gang began tampering with the signal at Sears Crossing. To hide the green light, he jammed a glove over it, and to activate the red light, he used a battery. Once everything was set, the gang hid and waited for the train to arrive. When the train approached Sears Crossing, the driver was shocked to see a red signal, because trains were never stopped at this crossing, especially not Royal Mail trains. Still, Jack Mills applied the brakes and brought the train to a halt, stopping right at the signal. Suddenly, an eerie silence spread all around. Moments later, the assistant driver, also known as a second man, stepped down from the train to contact the signalman using the trackside telephone. But when he picked up the phone, he realized the line had been cut, a key part of the robbers' plan. As the second man turned back toward the engine, the robbers suddenly emerged from the bushes and overpowered him. At the same time, a few gang members climbed onto the engine from both sides, tried to seize control of the driver. When Jack Mills resisted, one of the robbers struck him on the head with an iron rod, knocking him unconscious right in the driver's seat. The gang had arrived fully prepared. While chaos was unfolding in the engine, other team members quickly uncoupled the first 2 coaches behind the engine from the rest of the train. Their plan was to take the train itself away from the scene. But the question was, where? About 1 kilometer from Sears Crossing was Borrego Bridge, where the robbers had positioned their truck in advance. They had also brought along a retired railway driver, whose job was supposed to be to drive the train to the bridge. Up to this point, everything had gone exactly according to plan. But this is where the gang faced their first real problem. The driver they had brought panicked the moment he saw the controls of the engine. He had never operated this type of locomotive before. Left with no choice, the robbers tried to revive Jack Mills and force him to drive the train 1 kilometer ahead. Soon, the engine and the first 2 coaches began moving again, and the train was brought to a stop at Borrego Bridge. Meanwhile, the staff and the remaining coaches left behind had no idea why the train had stopped. Once at Borrego Bridge, the robbers broke open the door of the HVP carriage and stormed inside. They assaulted the 5 staff members, injuring them, then tied them face down with ropes before beginning their operation. Inside the HVP carriage were 128 bags filled with cash. The money consisted of £1 notes, £5 notes, and 10 shilling notes, with a total weight of nearly 2.5 tons. The train was stopped on the bridge, and a truck was waiting on the road below. According to the plan, the robbers had only 15 minutes. They quickly formed a human chain and managed to load 120 out of the 128 bags into the truck. The remaining 8 bags were left behind due to lack of time. The plan had worked almost perfectly, but in the end, there was one mistake, a mistake that would later become the key reason they were caught. Before leaving, one of the robbers warned the tied-up staff inside the HVP carriage not to move for 30 minutes, threatening them with death if they tried. The gang used an Austin Lodestar truck to carry the cash, along with 2 Land Rovers. To confuse witnesses, both vehicles were fitted with the same registration number, BMG 757. After the robbery, they fled the scene. About 45 minutes later, at around 4:30 a.m., they reached their hideout, located roughly 43 kilometers from the crime scene. The hideout was located about 43 kilometers away, near a village called Oakley. During the drive, they were listening in on police communications over a VHF radio, which proved extremely helpful to them. At almost the same time they reached their hideout, The police also became aware of the robbery. For the moment, however, the gang was overjoyed. They celebrated freely at the hideout, even playing a game of Monopoly using real banknotes. But their happiness lasted only a few minutes. Soon, through the radio, they learned that the police were searching for them within a 50-kilometer radius. The police came up with this range based on the statement of the train staff, whom the robbers had warned not to move for half an hour. The police correctly assumed that within 30 minutes, the gang could not have gone beyond a 50-kilometer radius. Hearing this, the robbers panicked. Their original plan was to leave the hideout on Sunday, but they immediately moved it up to Friday. On Thursday, they divided the stolen money among themselves. The total loot was around 2.5 million pounds. According to some reports, each member received about 150,000 pounds, which was an enormous amount at the time, equivalent to roughly 3.9 million pounds a day per person. The remaining money was distributed among the smaller helpers and support members. Before Friday arrived, they made sure to remove every possible trace of their presence from the hideout. They carefully wiped away their fingerprints and assigned one man the job of burning down the hideout after they left, so the police would find no evidence at all. He took the money, but instead of setting the place on fire, he fled without doing it. Meanwhile, the police were searching for the gang across the entire Buckinghamshire area. Helicopters circled the skies. Police vehicles raced through the streets, and the story had exploded across the national media. The police even announced a £10,000 reward for anyone who could provide information. That's when a man living near the hideout came forward and informed the police that there had been unusual activity there on the morning of August 8th. Without wasting any time, the police raided the hideout. It turned out to be a leather-slayed farmhouse, which the robbers had rented 3 months earlier. Inside, the police discovered a large amount of evidence linked to the robbery: empty cash bags, mail items, and even a truck that had been hastily painted yellow. The robbers had wiped away their fingerprints from most places. However, some fingerprints were still found on the Monopoly game they had played using real money. Those fingerprints became a major breakthrough in the case. Every member of the gang already had some kind of criminal record, and as a result, the fingerprints quickly matched with records held by the police and Scotland Yard, and the real culprits were finally identified. Within just a few days, the police arrested 14 out of the 16 people involved. Only 2 individuals managed to escape. One of them was a replacement train driver, whose real identity was never discovered. The other was a senior Royal Mail security officer whose inside information had made the entire plan possible. To this day, no one knows who that officer was. He never revealed his real name or showed his true face. The court declared this crime to be the biggest robbery of the century and sentenced almost all members of the gang to 30 years in prison. After the robbery, Bridego Bridge became famously known as the Train Robbers Bridge, a name it still carries informally to this day. As for Jack Mills, the 58-year-old train driver, the head injury he suffered meant he could never return to his job. 7 years later, he passed away due to trauma-related complications. We hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and share, and thank you so much for your love and supportive comments. We'll see you again in the next amazing video.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.